And so this is 30, and what have I done? Another year over, a new one just begun. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Chi Chi, and I'm 30 years old. Turning 30 sounded like hitting a milestone to me. Growing up, I would have imagined what my life would look like when I turned 30. I thought I would be married. I thought I would have kids. I thought I would have a successful career. But the reality is that I have none of those. And here we are at 30. We all know how older people tend to overshare about their past, how they constantly talk about what they did when they were younger and brag about their achievements. Since I'm 30, I'm going to do exactly that. I will share what I did in my 20s with all of you. So sit tight, let's get started. Now let's go back in time to when I was just 20 years old. I was at the end of my freshman year in college when I started my YouTube channel, Food Expert Chi. I started it because I wanted to record my life. I wanted to create some memories, and I want to store them in video form online. 11 days since I started my YouTube channel, I turned 20. To be honest, I knew nothing about life when I was 20 years old. All I knew was just that I had passions and I wanted to at least try to pursue them. I celebrated my 20th birthday, and the next day I found myself at a crossroad of life. In the morning of the day, I went to the university to take the entrance exam of the Teacher Education Center. And then in the afternoon, I changed into a beautiful dress, and my mom drove me to audition for the most popular TV singing contest back then. I was invited because I actually passed the first audition, and I went there to audition for the second time. And surprisingly, I got accepted into both. So the Teacher Education Center welcomed me there, and the singing contest on TV also wanted me to be a part of the show. So, well, I was at this crossroad where I had to pick either one because my time wouldn't allow me to take on both. I had to clearly consider what I wanted in life. I kept thinking about it. I kept debating, challenging myself, and just picturing my future. Let me guarantee you, it is still by far the most difficult decision I've ever made in life. But I had to make a choice. I was already 20 at the time, so I could sign any contract I wanted. But for some reason, I just couldn't. So I was crying and screaming, and I called my mom inside my room. My mom was like, "What happened to you?" I was in tears, and I told her, "I cannot sign this contract." So I told her, basically, I didn't ask her, I told her to call the TV people and tell them that I won't be there the next day. They tried to convince my mom to convince me to stay because a lot of young people wanted to be a part of the show, but I was actually invited to be on the show. But I told my mom that I couldn't do it. So I gave up on that, and I made my choice. I officially became a student at the Teacher Education Center. I would be lying to you if I told you I completely gave up on my dream as a singer. There are still moments in life when I would just imagine myself as a singer. I would imagine what my life would have become if I stayed on the show. I'm actually really thankful that I got to be trained by some professionals before deciding whether or not I would be on the show. And I also met some people that have actually made it. I met Chi Chi on that show. She's a famous and super talented singer slash songwriter. She is now very famous. She's doing amazing in the music and entertainment industry. And during our training sessions, she was my sweetest friend. She was so caring. She would text me even after I left the show. And I'm just super glad that I get to meet her and know her as a person. And I also met Pierre Liu Pei, who has over 1.21 million subscribers on YouTube, and he's doing amazing too. So even though I didn't end up continuing on the show, I met some amazing and inspiring people, and I think that that's more than worth it. And I'm really grateful for the experiences I had there. Yay, I finally reached the legal drinking age. Yay, I'm so excited. Well, in Taiwan, the legal drinking age is 18, but yay, I'm 21. When I was 21, I went to Australia with my family for the very first time. And little did I know that I would actually move to Australia the next year. When I was in Sydney, I ran into a university called the University of Notre Dame. And I would recall this name from the novel I was reading at that time. I was reading a novel called Something Borrowed by Emily Giffin. In the story, Rachel was complaining how her more popular friend, Darcy, would be accepted into one of the most prestigious universities in the world despite not having better grades than she did. So somehow this name, the University of Notre Dame, got stuck in my head. And when I saw the name, the University of Notre Dame, on one of the buildings in Sydney City Centre, I was like, oh my gosh, I know this name. I know this university. So I took the photo of the name on the building, even though it really didn't mean much to me, aside from it being in the novel that I was reading. I truly enjoyed Australia. We spent 21 days there, and it was really fun. I remember crying in front of the opera house because I somehow realized that I completely gave up on my dream as a singer, and I would never be able to actually perform in the opera house, and that made me really sad. But in general, I did enjoy my trip in Australia a lot. We visited many beautiful places in Australia. We also saw many beautiful and interesting wild animals in Australia, and that was truly an experience. After our trip, we were supposed to go back to Taiwan. We had to transfer in the Philippines, but because a typhoon hit, we weren't able to fly. So we stayed one night at a 5-star hotel, which was quite nice, but then on the next day we still couldn't fly, so we had to sleep at the airport in the Philippines for one more night. That was some experience. I even met the ambassador of Taiwan on that trip. And well, all I can say is that that's definitely an experience that I will never ever forget. And then I officially turned 22. I'm feeling 22. Everything will be alright if you keep me next to you. Alright, so I was 22 years old, and after I returned from Australia, I have started to look into exchange programs, not deliberately for going back to Australia, but one of my classmates was already on an exchange program I think in the US or in the UK, I think in the US, and she was having a blast. So I thought, hey, why not experience another country? It didn't have to be going back to Australia, even though I did enjoy Australia a lot. I just wanted to see what was out there. So I looked at the list of sister universities we had around the world, and guess what caught my eye? Yes, the University of Notre Dame. So at that time, I was determined to study at the University of Notre Dame because, like what Rachel said in the novel, the University of Notre Dame is one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Because I wanted to go on an exchange program and I am not a native English speaker, I had to take either a TOEFL or an IELTS test. And originally I wanted to take a TOEFL test, but they already had too many test takers. I was left with IELTS, and that was the very first international English test I had ever taken. I was quite nervous and I felt kind of lost, but I was also brave because I didn't actually study much for it. I thought I was pretty confident in my English skills. I didn't really bother much, but I was kind of nervous, which might sound kind of conflicting, but I guess I was quite young and free-spirited. I didn't really worry much. Actually, the University of Notre Dame had one of the highest standards of English tests. They required their applicants to at least have an overall score of 7 for IELTS to be a qualified applicant. And I never had the experience of taking any international English test in the past. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't really know how my English was on paper. I was just kind of lost and confused. Well, I was hoping for the best for sure. It was a super long process. I had many incidents where I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. I won't be even able to complete my application. But then in the end, after a very, very, very long application period, I got accepted, and it became official that I was going to move to Australia. I mean, I kind of knew about it. I mean, I knew that if I got accepted, I would have to move to Australia by myself, but I don't think my brain actually understood what was going on. Like, knowing about it and being able to process it, I guess, were two very different things. I got accepted, and I was set to go to Australia by myself, and I was going to live there for 1 full year. I mean, at least that was the plan. My parents flew to Australia with me, and they stayed there with me for 3 weeks, just until I settled down. And wow, I was in Australia living by myself. That was the very first time for me to live abroad by myself. I was young, in a new country, by myself. I could do whatever I wanted. I could be with whoever I wanted. I could be wherever I wanted. I was free. Australia is a beautiful country. The fact that I actually know the language is a plus. Like, I felt so at home. I felt so free. I felt so vibrant. It was just such an excitement to me. I was learning how to live abroad by myself, and I was exploring this new city while studying at my dream university. It was such a dream come true. I was so happy, and I was totally enjoying my new life. Soon after I moved to Australia, I started looking for a job because living in Sydney is really, really, really pricey, especially for somebody who has never experienced another country before. So I knew that I had to at least start looking for a job. I sent out over 100 resumes, but let me tell you, no company replied. I was not invited to any interview, and that was really frustrating to me. I thought it would be quite easy for me to find a job because Sydney is popular for backpackers. A lot of working holiday goers love Sydney because there's so many job opportunities, and I was located in Sydney city center. I was going to stay in the city center for 1 full year, so that wouldn't be much of a problem because backpackers usually move around quite a lot, so it's very difficult for employers to find backpackers who are going to work for them for a longer period of time. So there I was, ready to find a steady job. After a few months of not hearing from anybody, I finally got invited to a job interview, and guess what? I got my first job. I became a Mandarin teacher / nanny in Sydney. I was so excited. What can I say? I loved the job. I had to take care of 3 kids, and they were so sweet. I loved spending time with them, and I loved the job, but the problem was that the hours were not fixed. So there were a few weeks where I just worked for a few hours, and then I wouldn't hear from the mom at all, and then I would be called back for a few hours again. It was not the most ideal situation, but I loved my job and the pay was quite okay, so I couldn't say no, and I wanted to keep working for them even though the pay didn't really cover my rent. I was not financially struggling that much anymore, so I was okay. But then, slowly, the semester was coming to an end, and that meant that I had to make some plans for the upcoming summer, which is from mid-November to I think early February. I had to make some plans because those long months had to be somehow well spent. I kept praying, I kept applying for new jobs, but again, in vain. So I was really frustrated. But then a few retail companies did call me. I went to a few interviews and I got one job offer. It was not the best situation, but it was quite okay. It was in retail and I had to wear beautiful clothes. I could actually work at a well-known department store, which was quite nice. But I actually was a Christmas casual, so I didn't really have long hours. That was the same problem as when I was working as a Mandarin teacher. I didn't have long hours, and again, my pay couldn't actually cover my rent. But my supervisor couldn't give me more hours because there were no more hours available. I managed to survive the summer, and then the mom who hired me to become their Mandarin teacher actually offered me a live-in position, and I moved in with them so I could save my rent and I could get paid. Even though the location is quite far away from my university, I was really happy for the new job. But then something else happened and I had to move out. I couldn't work for them anymore, and that offer at the department store also ended because the new year came and they didn't really need more help anymore. So I was jobless again. I turned 23. My 23 years old did not start well. I wasn't really connecting with my roommates. I mean, I thought it was quite okay. Even though we couldn't be best friends, we didn't have to be enemies either. We could just live our own lives in the same room. Well, at least that's what I thought. That was not the case. But anyways, I somehow managed to survive that month, which I still considered it to be like one of the worst months in my life. My parents came to travel with me. It's like the one last travel before my exchange year officially ended. So it was really sweet. We went to many different cities in Australia and we did have a blast. At 24, I graduated from the university. I actually extended my studies for another year because even though I finished all of my studies for my major course, I had to extend my studies because I also wanted to finish my degree at the Teacher Education Center. My parents attended my graduation ceremony. If I think of my graduation ceremony, the only thing that makes me a little bit sad is that none of my classmates were there because they already graduated by the time I graduated. I more or less went to the graduation ceremony by myself, and because I was in Australia, I wasn't able to take graduation pictures with my classmates. Well, that kind of makes me sad, but that's okay. That's life. Sometimes you get some and you lose some. That summer, my mom and I went back to Australia, that time just for traveling, and it hit me differently. It felt different because I already spent 1 year in Australia. It almost felt like I went back home. I had a great time with my mom there, and it was so far the last time for us to be in Australia. I haven't been back since, and I wish that after COVID I will be able to visit Australia again. After we returned to Taiwan from our trip, I would say that my life actually started because I started working as a student teacher at a junior high school, and because it was kind of like an internship, I didn't get paid. But I did learn a lot. The experience was not a bed of roses, but I really did learn a lot. It broadened my horizons, and I met some really nice people who also aimed at becoming teachers, which was really inspiring. And I also met some students who are so sweet, and I still keep in touch with some of them every once in a while, so that is something that I definitely cherish. And then after I finally finished my semester at this junior high school, I became an English teacher. Ooh, that was truly exciting. At 25, I became a teacher. I was teaching at a junior high school, and well, it was my first actual teaching job, but I didn't have the easiest students to deal with. When I got to the junior high, some of my colleagues heard that I was teaching these classes and they were like, oh my gosh, because they didn't have the best reputation. But I tried to become friends with my students before making them think that I'm there to lecture them. I became friends with them, and then slowly I started to build this relationship where they would kind of differentiate me as their teacher and as their friend, and it worked well. Even though I was so inexperienced, I am quite proud of the outcome of my teaching. And again, I'm still in contact with some of my students from then, and they are all going to the university next year. Oh, this year, this September. I'm so proud of them, and I'm so grateful that I got to teach them, and I'm so grateful that I actually got them as my first group of students. That's why I actually attended their graduation ceremony 2 years later. I'm just so proud of them, so happy to have this kind of teacher-student-friend relationship. I love it. Even though I only had 3 months of teaching experience by the time I turned 26, I was more than sure that I wanted to stay a teacher for the rest of my life, hopefully. Because teaching is such a rewarding job, I feel like it's not really a job or a career, it's more like a hobby that I get to call my job, that I get to do on a daily basis. And I was this young teacher full of passion. I was so passionate about teaching that I would even want to go to school on weekends. But then the reality made me change to another school. And to be honest, I loved it. I love teaching, I love interacting with students, I love what I do. So I thought I was going to stay at that school. I switched to another school. When I knew that I had to switch to another school, I was actually really sad because I really loved what I did, but it felt like people didn't really think that I was a competent teacher. They didn't think that I was able to lead the students. I guess some people told me that I was too much of a friend to my students. I should be a teacher, not a friend or an older sister. I was really sad and I felt really lost. I even doubted my abilities as a teacher. I doubted whether I should have chosen to become a singer or anything else. So I was like really, really sad, but I still went to this new school. And gosh, I should have known that God had his plans. This new school was, at least the experience for me was like a trillion times smoother than the previous school. The students were so sweet. Like, honestly, I would sometimes feel discouraged, and my students would lift me up and make me feel better. They would actually say something really sweet that would actually just wake me up. And to be honest, I'm so grateful that God led me to this school, because without coming here I wouldn't have known how powerful I actually was. And I'm grateful for God, for my students, and for the whole environment. It was so sweet. But then I started thinking maybe it's time for a change. But I didn't really know what to do or where to go. I kept praying. I kept looking and praying. I kept the options open. When I was in Australia, I was determined to go back for my master's studies, but at this point I was willing to make a change, and Australia was one of the options. It wasn't the only option anymore. And eventually I decided to go to the country that is most famous for their education, because I loved education so much that I wanted to continue on this path. I actually took IELTS again. Well, that was kind of surprising to me, because when I took IELTS for the first time, I was convinced that I will never ever voluntarily take IELTS again. And when I was studying for my bachelor's, I was like, oh my gosh, I am not going to continue my studies. My studies are going to end here. But there I was, ready to take my IELTS test to continue my studies. Well, to be honest, it kind of surprises me too, thinking back. But I guess life is sometimes very surprising. When I was approaching 27, I got accepted into this master's program at a university in Finland. And to be honest, I started struggling again because I truly loved my life at that point. I loved teaching this group of students, and I didn't want it to end. So I was like, oh my gosh, should I or should I not take the offer? Deep down, I knew that I had to take it because my school told me that even if I stayed at the school, they wouldn't let me teach this group another year because then they would actually be ninth graders, and they don't really let inexperienced teachers teach ninth graders because that's the year they're going to take their very first national exam, and that is kind of important, and therefore they really prefer more experienced teacher to take on this mission. So yeah, even if I stayed at the school, I wouldn't teach the same group of students, and that's really the point why I wanted to stay at that school. So I was like, okay, fine, I need to accept the fact that this beautiful year is going to come to an end. But to be honest, I was even sadder than I was before I came to this school. After work, I would literally cry like it's the end of the world in the park. And after crying, after making myself look presentable, I would go home. And that happened for, I think, 2 or 3 months, every single school night. I know it's kind of unhealthy, but I just couldn't help it. Eventually, I had to pack up my life, and at 27, I flew all the way to Finland to start my master's studies. Finland, what can I say? Finland is not as I pictured it. When I just arrived in Finland, everything was nice and bubbly and really interesting and new. My mom went there with me for, again, 3 weeks, and then she went back to Taiwan, and there I was by myself in this new country. When I was in Australia by myself, I was very happy and excited. In Finland, I was also very happy and excited, but then I got a little bit of a culture shock. When I was walking down the streets in Finland, unlike in Australia, Finnish people are very quiet and they seem to be super serious. And so I was like, oh my gosh, maybe they dislike me. Maybe they don't think that I'm a part of their society. So I felt really frustrated, and I have always taken pride in my English ability. But when I arrived in Finland, because English is not their national language, I couldn't understand anything they were saying. And even though all of them, I mean, at least 99% of Finns can speak English, I couldn't read the signs in the streets. I couldn't read the packaging. I couldn't do anything because of the language barrier, and I felt really frustrated. I was like, oh man, now that I don't have the language ability, what else do I have that I can actually take pride in? So I was really sad, and I doubted my choice. But thankfully, I met some really nice classmates and some people who were in the same situation as I was, and I started to open up and embrace my life in Finland a lot more. But again, not everything is perfect. I had my ups and downs, and I had some good time and some bad time, and some time that I desperately wanted to go back home to Taiwan, but I managed to stay. In early 2020, the whole world was hit by COVID. And before that, I was blessed enough to explore a little bit of Finland and also the surrounding countries. I went to a national park and I stayed in a cottage for 3 nights with a group of Finnish women, and with my international friends, we got to experience the Finnish culture and the Finnish hiking and mushroom picking culture, and we also got to experience the traditional sauna, which was really an eye-opener to me. And in October, we also went to Estonia. Then in December, my Taiwanese friends, Teresa and Angela, asked me if I was willing to join them on their Sweden trip. So I also got to experience 3-4 days of Stockholm, Sweden. But then COVID hit and my social life just got shut down completely. I was really sad and really worried, and I felt lonely. I don't blame anybody. It's really because of the virus. I was in the house for 9 days by myself because I was too worried to leave the house, but then I had to leave because I needed to buy some groceries and I needed to breathe. But I have to say that COVID really messed up my schedule. I was planning on taking up more class observations to closely work with Finnish teachers, but all the plans got changed, and my 28 was pretty lonely. I'm glad that I had some of my international classmates who were experiencing quite similar feelings, but I'm also really sad that COVID had to hit while I was finally studying abroad again. But that kind of also gave me different perspectives because I got to see Finland before and during COVID and how they deal with the virus situation and all that. I'm super grateful. And I also met one close friend who was my roommate, but she's now my friend. Her name's Anna. And I also got to live with a Finnish woman who took very good care of me. And even though with the COVID situation I couldn't go to many different places, I couldn't experience the Finnish culture as I planned to, she actually was my personal tutor because we were living together, and she shared a lot of the Finnish culture with me. So I'm super grateful for Lilia, and Lilia also helped me when I was struggling with my laptop issues. My laptop actually completely broke, so for about 6 months I didn't have a laptop. I kept using hers to edit my videos and do my assignments and all that. So even though COVID hit, I still had quite a nice life in Finland. When I turned 29, I treated myself to a 5-star hotel staycation. I stayed at this hotel called Lapland Hotels because I wanted to re-experience my time in Lapland by myself. I actually went to Lapland when I was 28 by myself, like literally alone, and it was such a great experience. Well, I wanted to recreate the experience, but I didn't want to travel to Lapland again because it was like a 10-hour train ride from where I was living to Lapland. That's why I booked my birthday trip at Lapland Hotels. But in that year, I also kind of pushed myself to go to different cafes and go to different restaurants. Even though living in Finland can be quite expensive, I tried my very best to visit different restaurants and cafes because I knew that I was leaving Finland soon. And to be honest, I'm super grateful for my friends for keeping me company, like Momo and Henna and Lola and Valeria, Sarah, and all the other friends who actually were there to support me. We hung out a lot, and I also went to rabbit cafes with my friend Jucifer, who's a Taiwanese young lady, and we had a blast. Right before I came back to Taiwan, I actually tried to spend as much time as possible with these people who actually made me feel welcomed and made me feel like they actually cared about me as a friend. And so I'm actually super grateful that I did have those people around me. But I knew that it was also time for me to pack up my things, and I went back to Taiwan. I went to see my family. the people that I haven't seen in 2.5 years. I had to take a plane by myself for the very first time. Yes, you heard me right. I never actually took a plane alone, and this time I had to take a plane alone because of COVID. I was super worried, I was super scared, but I also tried my very best to focus on what I had to do step by step to kind of keep myself focused on what had to be done instead of worrying about things that may not actually ever happen. I was on this plane alone, and I flew all the way to Taiwan, and the highlight of this trip is that I actually had to stay in quarantine for 14 days. And honestly, it was quite scary, but then when I actually got into quarantine, it was one of the best time of my life, because I was literally just sleeping, eating, watching some drama, and then going back to sleep. It was really relaxing. But then after that, I finally saw my parents, and it's still surreal thinking back that I have been through so much and my parents still love me. I don't know how to explain my feelings, especially when I saw my parents again after so long. I'm just so grateful that I have their support and I have their love, and they still accept me for who I am. And in December of that very same year, I started working this corporate job. This is my very first time working in an office, not as a teacher, not as a student, just working 8 to 5 from Monday to Friday. To be honest, it's quite different from what I'm used to. It is quite stressful at times, but again, I try to embrace what I have. And some people might ask me, why are you not a teacher? Do you not want to be a teacher again? Oh yeah, I want to be a teacher. It's just I wanted to kind of experience what goes behind the scenes. And now I work for this company that specializes in bilingual education. So I thought, instead of constantly being on stage and teaching, I actually wanted to see how the planning process goes and how people behind the scenes work. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to work for this company. I mean, I have to say that all of my colleagues are so sweet and so supportive, and I just love working with these amazing people. I don't know if I can do this forever, but for now I just really want to embrace what I have. Now I'm 30. I can't wait to continue writing my own history, but whenever I look back, I look at the ups and downs, I look at the struggles that I had, I look at the exciting moments that I experienced, I look at the people that I really spend quality time with. I am nothing but grateful. Like, I am so grateful that I was able to do so much in my 20s. And oh, I forgot to tell you that when I was 29, I actually got to have my own sharing at the National Library about studying in Finland, and I have some viewers that will regularly ask me questions about studying abroad, who are interested in studying abroad, and they asked me about my experiences and they asked me for my advice, and for that I'm just super grateful. Even though I'm not a singer as I planned to be, even though I'm not some celebrity, some YouTube star, some famous person, I am living my life as I want it to be, and I have people who love me, and I might not be married, I might not have kids, I might not have something that people call a successful career. I am satisfied and I love what I am, I love what I do, and I can't wait for me to write my own history. I would like to thank all of you for your love and support on this channel. I just feel so relaxed and so loved on this channel. I could just be whoever I want, do whatever I want, and I know that you guys will have my back. So thank you so much for supporting me, for supporting my channel, for the past decade, and I cannot wait for another decade with all of you guys. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to this channel, and if you have and like this video, please hit the like button. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Happy birthday to me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Love you.